Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two of this insanely awesome journey. My name is Greg. I will be the background voice of this video for the duration. Today, I'm going to go over kind of some of what we did in part one, and then I'm also going to touch into the actual gateway process, the document written by one of the members of the CIA at the time. So let's get started. So just to kind of recap the first video, Frisson, also known as the Goosebumps or the chills, is essentially the scientific term for Kundalini slash PT slash chakra energy, among many other names depending on the cultural lens, Chi, Mana, Prana, Holy Spirit, etc. This is what you are attempting to build up during transcendental meditation. So most people who experience Frisson for the first time get it from music, which does help develop your nervous system for it. However, self-inducing it boils down to perceptions, emotions, and your control over them. And just a side note, ASMR, because a lot of people talk about that. ASMR is essentially, as far as I understand it, is the involuntary version of Frisson. So both of them, you're getting those chills and you're getting the positive sensations. Just Frisson is something that you induce or your emotions induce. And ASMR is simply a physical reaction to some external stimuli. Frisson can be the same thing, but it's emotional provoking. So that's the key difference as far as I understand. I know there's not much science regarding either of those, shockingly, but also the scientists that I believe study it, they don't quite understand yet that Frisson can actually become a sustainable state where you can hold Frisson for hours upon hours in meditation. And even not in meditation, you can do it while you're doing waking meditations, so to speak. So yeah, many Eastern religions prescribe detachment from materials for this very reason, right? So if self-inducing Frisson boils down to your perceptions, your emotions, and your control over them, nothing is quite better than detaching from everything, because you get rid of all possible expectation from those things in the future. And by detaching, you release all expectation, which is the root source of any dissatisfaction, right? It's because you have a belief that something ought to be a certain way. And then when it doesn't go that way, your emotions are upset because it went against your belief that you had, prior to that. So as so long as you have beliefs and you have a world out there that can upset or go against your beliefs, you're going to have emotional reactions to it. It's just kind of naturally how humans operate, right? We are mind and emotional beings. So if you're able to detach from everything, your beliefs essentially, if you're able to detach from those things and understand, well, I don't really know anything for sure, well, then you no longer have expectations and you no longer are able to become upset or emotionally distraught because of external things, right? So that's the whole point of it in a nutshell. Obviously, that's way oversimplified, but let me keep reading. So by detaching, you release all expectation, which is the root source of any dissatisfaction. It's all in the mind, no matter how negative we perceive some things to be. Spirituality is essentially the development of your emotions, which are a direct result of both your conscious and subconscious beliefs. So from the moment we're born, let's say, I believe most of us are blank slates when we're born, and we could talk about intuition and all that stuff later. But for the most part, in terms of pure knowledge, we are born without knowledge. We're born with just blank minds. Tabula rasa is what it's called, a blank slate. And throughout each experience, encounter, everything we go through in life, every person, every song that we hear, everything is constantly launching vibrational energy at us. It vibrates on its own frequency, and you are encountering that frequency as you go through it, right? In the form of possibly an encounter that could cause you to create new sustained beliefs within yourself. And as you gain more and more both conscious and subconscious beliefs, your emotional reactions are going to start forming based on those root beliefs. And many of them are subconscious beliefs. We're not even aware of them. Like I know that I don't like, let's say I don't like a certain food and I know I don't like that food. Well, that's a conscious belief. The subconscious ones are things that obviously I can't talk about while I'm in a waking state, right? I'm not even sure that they're there. So these things are gathering up in us throughout our lives, throughout every encounter. You're constantly forming new beliefs, changing your sympathetic and enteric nervous systems based on these beliefs. And so back to the paper. So spirituality is essentially the development of your emotions, which are a direct result of both your conscious and subconscious beliefs. Strong positive emotions will cause frisson. So technically, you can get it doing virtually anything that brings those out. Meditation, qigong, yoga, tantra, dancing, singing, running, movies, video games, reading, listening to speeches, etc. Whatever moves you emotionally. And binaural beats can help induce it as well. Many of you have probably heard of binaural beats by now, but they've gotten really popular for this simple fact, because we know there's a spiritual element to it, but I really want to translate this to the actual physical sensation we're supposed to be going after as well. So let's take these examples, right? So as strong positive emotions can cause frisson, and you're the type of person that thinks qigong is dumb and it has no purpose. Well, your beliefs over qigong, thinking that it's stupid, thinking that it whatever it is, let's say you just think it's a negative thing, your beliefs are going to dictate your emotional reaction. So if you think that thing is negative somehow, you're not going to be able to derive the strong positive emotion from it, simply because you have excluded it from within your mind already. You already think it's a negative thing that doesn't have power. Whereas you might, on the other hand, be really into video games, and let's say you like video game storylines, or you like the music in the video games, or whatever. You think that something in the video game is positive, and it induces strong emotions out of you because you have this prior belief that video games can be good and that the music in them can be good, or whatever it is. It is your prior beliefs, again, that dictate your emotional response. And so if you can come around to liking qigong, let's say you've never heard of it. If in case you've never heard of it, qigong it's kind of like slow dance moves, kind of like yoga in a way. That might be a little bit different, but if you believe that there's an energy flowing within you and that there's a positive thing, it can induce frisson while you're doing it. And same with meditation, same with yoga, same with all the things. Or if you think they're all bad, then you're going to have a hard time inducing frisson from them. Again, it depends on your conscious and your subconscious beliefs. So meditation is unique as far as my experience. It's unique in that you build it up slowly, and while sustaining it, the frisson that is, and you eventually reach a peak. Whereas in waking state activities, it tends to come in quick, intense bursts that most of us are familiar with, right? When you get the chills on your arms or your back or your neck, or wherever you get them. You can get them anywhere on your body, literally anywhere. But that's where I've noticed they at least started for me, and from talking to other people. And you can pick this up once you start listening to people getting the chills, right? It's referred to a lot in songs, but that's what's happening. They're getting a very strong emotional pull, and it's causing the metaphysical energy to basically build up within. So let's see. So while meditating, once you build it up sufficiently, so meditation, you're going to be sitting there, and depending on how long you've meditated in your life, and when you started, and also how long you've been pursuing frisson, eventually you get to the point to where you can sit in meditation, and it will start to build up the chills rather quickly. You'll start to get them, and it's not one of those bursts that you get, when you listen to a song and the crescendo hits, and you're like, oh, you feel the chills all over your body, and then it goes away after about 2 seconds. It's not like that. This is something you sustain, and you can sustain for hours upon hours. So let me start that sentence over. So while meditating, once you build it up sufficiently, your heart rate and blood pressure must become nearly unnoticeable for the Frisson / PT to hit its peak, or what's also called a rapture. And then look up the CIA process, or read the Stalking the Wild Pendulum by Istok Mentov, the Bifurcation Echo section. We're going to go over that just after this. The peak of your Frisson / PT or rapture is all about lowering your heart rate and sustaining it while keeping your awareness single pointed, so focused on one thing. The Frisson can become very intense, even uncomfortably so. I know for a fact so many times, and I mentioned this in the previous video, you've reached that point, you've been meditating for 45 minutes, an hour, and your tingles are just, people will describe them as pinpricks, and it even gets uncomfortable, painful for some people. But nonetheless, this is the sensation that you need to go through in order to enter higher states of consciousness. So if you are able to sustain the low heart rate, and again, the low heart rate is absolutely crucial, and we'll go over the physics right after this, you will enter a deep state of transcendental meditation, which is also called a jhana. You will know because you will enter a state of extreme bliss. It's impossible to confuse once you're there. And there are more stages after that. After you go through the Frisson intense stage, the later stages no longer deal with Frisson. I haven't reached the higher stages yet, but that is what I'm told by people that are well known for teaching transcendental meditation, and who also refer to this sensation. Mostly I hear it called PT in those kind of circles, which is why I've included so many different names for it. But Frisson is the key that most of us in the ordinary sector of the population know it as, or some of us don't even know that. I know I didn't for a long time. I always just called it the goosebumps or the chills, right? Such a mundane kind of, I don't know, just slang terms that don't even really give it justice, right? It's just like, oh, it's just the goosebumps. Oh, it's actually the metaphysical sensation that's guiding our consciousness through evolution. Yeah, so it's not really getting justice there. But yeah, that's likely on purpose. We'll get to that stuff later. But for now, let's just keep it with what you're trying to do. You're trying to build up these chills, and that is going to require you to have to lower your heart rate and lower your blood pressure and sustain those two things. So again, it's going to come down to enter these deeper states of meditation. If you're being bothered by stuff, by thoughts, and let's say, you got in an argument with your boss, and then that you can't get that out of your mind, well, that's going to keep making negative emotions reoccur in you. It's going to keep, and even if it's ever so slight, it's going to keep making your heart rate rise every time you have that thought come into your head. So it's one giant game of learning to not let anything affect your emotions to the point to where it doesn't even mess up your heart rate. Now, to sustain that, you might need to be the Buddha, and perhaps that's what they do. They Jesus, Buddha, the great teachers who have come before, and have largely been misinterpreted, I think, they may have entered a permanent state of Frisson. And I believe that it's going to be key in understanding that we have to coordinate that sensation with our beliefs that we choose to actually take on and give emotional credit to. So over time, let's see. So remember, Frisson is the key sensation. I know I'm saying that over and over. You can go after it as much as possible, whether meditating or not. Waking meditation is a beautiful thing to do, to practice. If you're just walking down the street, don't do it while driving, of course, focus on the road. But if you're on a treadmill or something where you can have your attention focused without, putting yourself or others in danger, you can do that. And it can be as simple as focusing on your breath, focusing on a mantra, as simple as saying, I am, right? I am is a mantra. It could be that simple. But that's the whole point, is that you're focusing your concentration. It really doesn't matter what on. All of it is going to help you to increase the attention span of your focus ability, which is what meditation is essentially doing. If you're always staying in the present, if you're always focused on one particular thing, one particular sensation, which indirectly is keeping you focused on that moment, it's one particular aspect of the moment, but it is still the moment. You're gonna strengthen this sensation and make it easier to achieve while meditating as well, in a non-waking meditation state. So, by all means, listen to the music, do the qigong, the singing, the move, whatever makes you feel it, pursue it. And the great thing is, it's usually free, because you know this. You probably already know the songs you like that get it. You probably already know the movies that you like that get this, or the other activities, right? Runner's High. Runner's High is the same thing. You're activating your Frisson, right? Like I said in the other video, the spirit runners, right? The indigenous long distance runners, they're incurring Frisson. That's why it's a spiritual act, because they understand that this is a long process of developing this sensation, and it has to do with the evolution of our consciousness. So let's see. Now, over time, you will feel it simply by taking a deep, calming breath or having a pleasant thought. Surrender to the universe. We're all just actors. And all right, yeah, that's just my love stuff, but whatever. All right, so let's go to the fun paper. This is the CIA's analysis and assessment of the gateway process. The gateway process was a process that was originally created by Bob Monroe, and he founded the Monroe Institute, where they essentially teach these different methods of meditation combined with mental work, focusing on different things in order to induce intuition, body healing, out-of-body experiences, all sorts of different stuff that have to do with consciousness itself and the science of consciousness. So a lot of the stuff that they talk about as well, a lot of it has been deemed occult to this point, but just briefly, just talking about the science of quantum entanglement, particle non-locality, vibrational resonance, and epigenetics, of course, the water experiments with Dr. Emoto, not to mention testimonial evidence from the thousands of people who have near-death experiences, who actually do astral project or out-of-body experiences, the accounts from yogis and shaman who have been telling us these things for thousands of years. The evidence is just overwhelming, and the actual scientific evidence, like I said before, of entanglement, non-locality, they're catching up, and we now know that we live in quite a amazing universe. It's not this dead material thing that we thought. Everything is consciousness, it seems, and we actually have effect on it, and knowing that can be very empowering. All right, so that was kind of like a side tangent, but nonetheless, I'm not going to read this whole thing, because you honestly could talk about this for hours and probably write a doctorate on it. But I must say it is extremely well written by Wayne McConnell. Let's go to the parts that I wanted to get to. So we're going to try and talk about transcendental meditation, obviously, as I've been. And this is what they have to say about it. So right now, up to this point, they were talking about methods for inducing altered states of consciousness. All right, that's essentially what you're doing in the gateway experience or gateway process. And this institute is still in existence. They still have a website, and you can pay like $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that to go stay with them and do a course with them. By all means, if you can afford it, there you go. If not, I guess you're stuck with my free video. All right. So hypnosis is one of the first things that they talk about for getting people to induce altered states of consciousness. But this, of course, requires someone to hypnotize you, unless you can do it yourself. So we'll go down to transcendental meditation. All right. On the other hand, transcendental meditation works in a distinctly different fashion. In this technique, intense and protracted single-minded concentration on the process of drawing up energy up the spinal cord ultimately results in what appears to be creation of acoustical standing waves in the cerebral ventricles, which are then conducted to the gray matter in the cerebral cortex on the right side of the brain. As a result, according to Bentov, these waves will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes and on up. Homunculus. Now, if you don't know what that word is, if you take a brain and you take away half of it and look at the side, the homunculus is essentially this outside line right here, viewing the brain from a sideways view. So the toes are going to be right here, right? And this is the knee, arms, fingers, head, body here. So it's just basically drawing out a diagram for which parts of the brain coordinate to which parts of the body. So if you have one of those signals conducted along the homunculus and that signal goes like right here, well, then you're going to get Frisson in your knee. That's what they're talking about. This signal is Frisson being conducted. And likewise, if you get it here, down here, you'll get it along your head, right? So this is the homunculus. Okay, it's just a sideways profile view of the brain. Let's get back to the actual paper. All right. The Bentov biomedical model, as described in a book by Lee Sanella entitled Kundalini Psychosis or Transcendence, states that the standing acoustical waves are the result of the altered rhythm of heart sounds, which are occasioned by prolonged practice of meditation, and which set up sympathetic vibrations in the walls of the fluid-filled cavities which comprise the third and lateral ventricles of the brain. In addition, according to Bentov, the states of bliss described by those whose Kundalini symptoms have completed the full loop along the hemispheres may be explained as a self-stimulation of the pleasure cortex. All right. So, I missed a sentence, didn't I? Let's read that again. The states of bliss described by those whose Kundalini symptoms have completed the full loop along the hemispheres may be explained as a self-stimulation of the pleasure centers in the brain caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. All right, so that was a little roughly read there, but I think you get the point. So there is an electrical current that is stimulating that part of the brain, and that's why you feel it in the corresponding parts of your body. So although normally a period of meditation involving intense concentration and practice for 5 years or some is required to, quote, bring up the Kundalini, Bentov states that exposure to mechanical or acoustical vibrations in the range of 4 to 7 hertz cycles per second for protracted periods may achieve the same effect. And this is where you get the binaural beats and basically the hemispheric synchronization that they talk about later in this paper. But essentially you're using 2 different beats, one in each ear, and you're using those 2 different beats to allow your brain hemispheres to sync up, producing one beat. So if let's say your left ear is hearing a frequency of 7 hertz and your right ear is hearing a frequency of 4 hertz, we'll just use those, then your brain is going to make one of the difference. So it's going to hear a beat frequency of 3 hertz. And so that's essentially what it will synchronize to produce. It's not going to produce one as 4 and one as 7. No, it's going to combine them and give you the difference. That is what you're going to actually feel. That is what you're going to hear. That's what you're going to have as a sensation. So your brain is doing work and basically dissecting reality for you. We're just learning how it does it now. And so this is one of the things that we've learned. Apparently they learned it about 40 years ago, but nonetheless, here we are. So Bentov cites as an example, repeated riding in a car whose suspension and seat combination produced that range of vibrations, or being focused or being exposed for a long periods of time to these frequencies caused, for instance, by an air conditioning duct. So it doesn't have, like, you can get, obviously this seems pretty clear, you can get Frisson or ASMR from something that you're not inducing. Obviously ASMR you're not, but you can get these sensations just by being around the right frequencies, just being subjected to them. Because like I said, everything is producing a vibrational frequency. Everything is, literally. And so you're feeling it whether you're conscious of it or not. And your brain is then processing these different frequencies and producing your reality for you. And some of these are in line with altered states of consciousness. And that's essentially what they're saying, is that you can incidentally have these experiences of kundalini rising, physio kundalini, as they call it. But that's essentially, it's simply your frisson intensifying. It's your frisson rising up from, the small of your back all the way to the crown of your head, which is where it will eventually end up at some point. Especially, the sooner you start working on this stuff and knowing that your body is responding to the universal energies, which is still geeks me out, to be honest. But it is something that it depends on how much work you want to put into it, how much you're going to get out. So let's keep going. So again, the key part I wanted to really focus in on was them referring to it as a self-stimulation of the pleasure centers in the brain caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. Okay? So if you even think about it, what does frisson feel like? We call it the chills, right, for a reason, but the goosebumps, your hair stand up, that's like, it's almost like static electricity in a way, but it's, when you really think about it, in my opinion, it is absolutely some kind of bioelectrical effect. And we know our hearts generate electromagnetic fields. So does your brain, although it's not as powerful as your heart. But nonetheless, we generate these fields. So does our environment. So does the earth. And we're constantly connecting with those. But nonetheless, we have our own. And yeah, this sensation absolutely feels electrical in nature, which is pretty awesome. Biofeedback, it is another state of consciousness similar to these. So all of these different things, hypnosis, biofeedback, meditation, you are accessing this same kind of energy, right? With you're trying to enter altered states of consciousness, but they're just describing different methodologies to do it. That's what they're doing. Biofeedback is one where you can actually learn to control the automated responses in your body. So things like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, your, let's say, your ability to heal, right? Because we know we can heal ourselves, but it tends to be very slow. This may, or as the science says, it is a way that we can increase the speed at which we heal. We can alter our heart rate. Most of us already know we can do that. We can alter our blood pressure, right? And this also correlates with just stress lowers your heart rate. Stress lowers your blood pressure. It's no coincidence. All this stuff lines up. And biofeedback is when you really grab the bull by the horns and you know that your mind is able to manipulate these things, and then you start trying to learn how to do that for the positive or in the negative. I mean, I don't know what people are doing out there, but I assume everyone wants to do it for the positive, to heal themselves, possibly heal other people. And again, I know this sounds kind of occult-like stuff, right? When you that sounds like magic. Who can heal stuff with their mind? And it's like you actually can do it. And here's your government saying you can 40 years ago. And again, I'll just reiterate, we have science that some of it's not even old. It's been around for a while, but we have things like quantum entanglement, non-locality, the vibrational resonance. Sound itself contains information. If you've never seen sand on like a speaker, or they'll put it on like a metal board and then they'll shoot the hertz through the board so it's vibrating, they will actually take the sand itself will take on different shapes, and that tells us that the sound itself is carrying information, physical information. Epigenetics is another big one. Epigenetics is showing that we have the ability to alter how our genes are read. So basically how the genes are read, and then what proteins will be produced as a result of that gene reading. Well, we can affect that by our belief systems. By believing good things about ourselves, you're gonna have more positive epigenetic readings. Basically, if you are constantly down on yourself, or low self-esteem, or beating yourself up, or you're constantly angry, it's gonna have detrimental effects on your epigenetic. So, I mean, and all of this we see just naturally, right? Avoiding stress, avoiding bad things that upset you, because we know it affects our health. Well, we now have the science to show 100% that it actually, our brains and our thoughts dictate the physical manifestation that we have, which we call our body. And it also, it can dictate a lot of personality traits. It can dictate cancer growth, stuff like that. So epigenetics is a very powerful piece of evidence, I believe, not to mention the quantum stuff. So let's keep going. I don't want to get too off topic on that. We can cover that stuff later. Let's see. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and read this one. So this is Gateway and Hemi-Sync. They're going to talk about the actual gateway process a little bit more. So now that we have briefly profiled the basic mechanics of the principal techniques for altering or expanding consciousness, which share some of the objectives and or methods employed in the gateway experience, we may proceed to focus on what that technique actually involves. Fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres, so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. All right, the participant then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers. What differentiates the gateway experience from forms of meditation is its use of the Hemi-Sync technique, which is defined in a monograph by Monroe Institute trainer Melissa Yeager as a state of consciousness defined when the EEG patterns of both hemispheres are simultaneously equal in amplitude and frequency. Although Hemi-Sync seems to be rather rare and of only short duration in ordinary human consciousness, Melissa Yeager states that audio techniques developed by Bon Monroe can induce and sustain Hemi-Sync with the Institute's basic Focus 3 tapes. She also notes that studies conducted by Elmer and Alice Green at the Menninger Foundation have shown that a subject with 20 years of training in Zen meditation could consistently establish Hemi-Sync at will, sustaining it for over 15 minutes. Dr. Stuart Twemlow, a psychiatrist and a research associate of the Monroe Institute, reports that in our studies of the effect of the Monroe tape system on brainwaves, we have found that the tapes encourage the focusing of brain energy. It can be measured as with a light bulb in watts into a narrower and narrower frequency band. This focusing of energy is not unlike the concept or the yoga concept of one-pointedness, which we may translate in Western terms as a single-mindedness. Dr. Twemlow goes on to observe that as the individual gets into the tapes beyond focus 3, there is a gradual increase in brainwave size, which is a measure of brain energy or power. All right, so that one goes hand in hand here with this lamp versus laser. Melissa Yeager uses a metaphor to help clarify the process involved in the use of Hemi-Sync in the gateway experience. She points out that the human mind in its natural state may be likened to an ordinary lamp, which expends energy in the form of both heat and light, but in a chaotic, incoherent way, which diffuses its energy over a wide area rather than a limited depth, right? This is why a light bulb lights up a whole room, because it's not focused like a flashlight. On the other hand, the human mind under the discipline of Hemi-Sync acts after the fashion of a laser beam, which produces a disciplined stream of light. The stream of energy is projected with total coherence of both frequency and amplitude, such that the surface area of a laser beam contains billions of times the concentrated energy found in a similar surface area on the sun. Gateway assumes that once the frequency and amplitude of the human brain are rendered coherent, it is possible to begin accelerating both so that the human mind is soon resonating at even higher vibrational levels. The mind can then bring itself into synchronization with more sophisticated and rarefied energy levels in the universe. The mind, when operating at these increasingly rarefied levels, is assumed to be capable of processing the information thus received through the same fundamental matrix by which it makes sense of ordinary physical sensory input to achieve meaning in a cognitive context. Such meaning is usually perceived visually in the form of symbols, but may also be perceived as astonishing flashes of holistic intuition, or even in the form of scenarios involving both visual and oral perception. Oral. Yeah, that's right. The mechanics by which the mind exercises the consciousness function will be addressed in more detail later in this paper. All right. So they're basically talking about information being transferred in the form of a lamp or a light. And this goes hand in hand, like they were saying, with single-minded concentration, which we're trying to do in meditation, in transcendental meditation, right? I talked about the heart rate and the heart rate and blood pressure being key, and also the single-mindedness. And this is explaining why. Right? When you're scatterbrained, or as it's sometimes called monkey mind, and a lot of other people have their own names, but basically when your mind's just racing like it normally does, it's not focused. It's just bouncing around. It's observing every single thought that comes into your mind is something that is affecting you, and you're not concentrating on what you want, but simply you're having to deal with all of the sensory input coming both externally and internally in the forms of thoughts. When all that is happening, when you're in just your normal state of consciousness, you're not focused. And learning to focus is the reason why is because of the transference potential of energy, as they talk about here. Let's see. So gateway, I talked a little bit about the beat frequency earlier, how you have two different frequencies of beats, one in one ear, one in the other ear, and then your brain basically takes the difference. That's what Hemi-Sync is doing. It's kind of like a hack for Frisson. It's a hack to get you into this state of consciousness without having to do the, 20 years of Zen meditation. Nonetheless, the goal is the same. The goal is to achieve Frisson, the buildup of these chills that become so intense that they can be uncomfortable. But nonetheless, this is the key sensation for spirituality. And in my opinion, this is when a person has a religious awakening, or when they feel like forgiven by Jesus, and they're able to and they go through, you know, a spiritual awakening there, but it's very concentrated, let's say, on Jesus. You're going to look at things through the cultural lens that you've been a part of. And naturally, if Jesus is something that is huge in our culture, right? So it just makes sense that a lot of people are going to have these spiritual experiences in the form of religious experiences. And essentially what is happening is the Kundalini, or the Frisson, is just building up, and they're getting so much positive emotion from their new beliefs about Jesus that it erupts, and it basically opens at the top of your head, which is called a crown chakra in the East, and I don't think we have a name for it in the West, but nonetheless, that's where this sensation ends up, and you'll start getting it all the time in your temples or in your forehead or on the top of your head, and it literally feels like you're wearing a crown. So let's see. All right. So this is where they talk about the beat frequency a little bit more, which I've been talking about. So I'm not going to read that part, but I want to end it with this paragraph because I just think it's perfect, and it talks about the heart and the physics with the heart. So, all right. So this is the role of resonance when you're trying to enter these deeper states of consciousness. So, however, brain coherence through entrainment to beat frequencies introduced via stereo headphones is only part of the reason why the gateway system works. Okay, so basically they're saying our brain hack is only one reason why it works, right? Because you listen to these tapes, it creates, which are basically binaural beats with instructions on them. I'm gonna give a link below, which will give you access to all of the tapes, so you can try the whole Monroe thing out for yourself. Someone was kind enough to leave it on Reddit, or I believe it's on YouTube. Either way, I'll find it and link it, but you'll have all the tapes. So let's keep going. It is also designed to achieve the physical quietude characteristic of deep transcendental meditative states, which brings about a complete alteration of the fundamental resonance pattern associated with the sound frequencies being produced by the human body. Yoga, Zen, or transcendental meditation, if practiced long enough, will produce a change in the sound frequency with which the human heart resonates throughout the entire body. According to Bentov, this change in resonance results from elimination of what the medical profession calls the bifurcation echo, so that the sound of the heartbeat can move synchronously up and down the circulatory system in harmonious resonance approximately 7 times a second. Bentov describes the role played by the bifurcation echo as follows. When the left ventricle of the heart ejects blood, the aorta, being elastic, balloons out just beyond the valve and causes a pressure pulse to travel down along the aorta. When the pressure pulse reaches the bifurcation in the lower abdomen, which is where the aorta forks in two to go into the legs, part of the pressure pulse rebounds and starts traveling up the aorta. If in the meantime the heart ejects more blood and a new pressure pulse is traveling down, these two pressure points will eventually collide somewhere along the aorta and produce an interference pattern. By placing the body in a sleep-like state, the gateway tapes achieve the same goal as meditation in that it places the body in such a profoundly relaxed state that the bifurcation echo slowly fades away as the heart lessens the force and frequency with which it pushes blood into the aorta. The result is a regular, rhythmic, sine wave pattern of sound which echoes throughout the body and rises up into the head in sustained resonance. The amplitude of this sine wave pattern, when measured with a sensitive seismograph type instrument, is about 3 times the average of the sound volume produced by the heart when it is operating normally. All right, so to get a visual of this, imagine your heart in your chest, right? And it pumps blood down. And if in case you're not sure, your aorta is about the size of a garden hose. So we're not talking like something that's little and skinny. We're talking about something that pumps it's pretty thick, and it shoots a lot of blood. So it's got some force there, right? That's if you've ever had heart blood pressure, which I have, sometimes you just be sitting there and you can literally feel your pulse in your body. And that's what's happening is you're straining this pushing of blood. So nonetheless, let's get back. So imagine your heart in your chest, and it's got like a garden hose that we call the aorta, and it goes down, and it when it reaches the point where your legs are, it divides into two. So then you have two aortas essentially going down into one goes into each leg. And if I'm getting the name of the artery wrong, just ignore it. Essentially, the aorta goes down. They might change names after that. I'm not sure, but so at the point, right where it splits into two and goes into each leg, every time your heart beats, it creates like a wave, a pressure wave with your blood. And that's what shoots it, right? That's the momentum of the blood traveling in your body. Well, that momentum, that wave, is going to travel down your aorta, and then as soon as it hits that divide where it splits into the left and right leg, part of it is going to bounce off of that divide, and it's going to shoot back up at your heart. It's going to came from where it was sent. And if your heartbeat pumps again in that time, the wave that's coming back up, which obviously isn't going to be as strong because it's a partial ricochet from the first wave that your heart pumped, it's going to be coming back up to meet the new wave that was just pumped by your heart. And as we know, whenever, if you've ever taken a bath or been in the ocean or something, and you splash two waves and they hit each other, they cancel out. And so that's essentially is what is happening here. And that's how we go about living our normal, that's our normal physical state, just going about our everyday lives. However, when you train your nervous system and you train through meditation or even through these Hemi-Sync tapes, whatever works to get you there, you get to the point to where this bifurcation echo no longer collides, because when that ricochet starts coming back up from that divide, it'll actually reach your heart before your heart pumps a new wave out. And so that's what it's talking about when it means to become in resonance. And that's why when you're trying to do transcendental meditation and you're trying to achieve these consciousness states, not only do you have to keep your mind single pointed, so you have to concentrate on one thing and keep it concentrated on that one thing. And that's in order to, turn from the lamp into the laser, to use that analogy again. But you also have to get your blood pressure and your heart rate down in order to gain resonance with this bifurcation echo, right? And that's what they call it, the echo that comes back off of the divide and bounces back up. That's the bifurcation echo. That's exactly what they mean. So that is why it's absolutely critical for anyone who wants to do transcendental meditation. You have to achieve those things. You have to achieve the single-mindedness. I can't even say it right now. And you also have to have the slow, steady heart rate, which will also more than likely be accompanied with the blood pressure. So that is what you're looking out for when you want to reach these deep states of consciousness. And there's more to this paper, which I'll cover at a different time. But just to point out that this is a program which is designed to create or induce out-of-body experiences. So astral projection, like some people talk about, or the yogis and the shaman and the spiritual tribal leaders have been telling us for thousands of years that we can do this stuff, right? This is the concept of a soul, right? We're able to take our consciousness and float around. We're not high enough in our mental training. We're kind of like, as far as consciousness goes, we're like infants still. So we have a lot to learn, but this is part of it. And it all comes back around to, not only do these physical things, not only are those just cool and exciting in and of themselves, but they directly correlate to your beliefs and what you allow yourself to make you happy or not happy, or even if you're at a point where you can be giving allowance to things to make you happy or not happy, right? Most of us are just whatever comes at us and we just react, and we're not really consciously thinking about our reactions. But it does seem like there is a different change going on the planet right now, and more people are beginning to get aware of this stuff, which is great. This is the evolution of consciousness. I believe this is what we're here to do on Earth, and while we're alive right now, we're here to evolve our consciousness. And that, not more important than the mental academic aspect, the intellectual academic, I should say. More importantly, it's about the emotional development, and that directly corresponds, I should say, to your nervous system, right? Your brain, your pineal gland, your intestines, your heart. We now know that the heart and the stomach both have neurons, kind of like a brain's, but they have their own unique neurons. So when you have intuitions telling you to do something, or giving you certain feelings about something, you should not disregard those, like we've been taught in science, that the emotions get in the way. No, emotions are your power. And obviously we all need to learn to control them, but that's the whole point, is when you learn to let go and stop judging everything. In fact, you look at judging as kind of like the enemy. Like you got to realize, like, who am I to judge anything? Like I'm just a being. I'm just a dude disguised as a dude playing a dude. You know what I mean? We're just regular people on a tiny little grain of sand in this vast cosmos. Like, who are we to lay down any kind of foundation of law or say that this is how something objectively exists? Like, we just don't know. And that's the whole point, is that we don't know. You have to let go. You have to surrender and stop trying to force the universe to bend to your will, and you give into it. And it really doesn't matter if you give in to Buddha, if you give in to Jesus, if you give in to Allah, if you give in to unconditional love, or if you just give in to the universe itself. You're giving up to a higher power, which then triggers faith. And in a reality that is a mind-created reality, right? We can't do anything without conceiving of it first. Every building, every chair, everything you look at was first thought about before it came into actuality. So in a universe where, and that's just kind of like a basic description. I'm not even giving credence to the fact that our minds actually alter reality, which there's evidence to show that is in fact the case. But I'll go into that a little bit later. But like I mentioned before, quantum entanglement, non-locality. There's science now coming out about quantum entanglement between twins, between animals. It's likely that's what begins to happen when people fall deeply in love with each other. That's why they start finishing each other's sentences. They start mimicking each other's behaviors. It's because they are beginning to operate on one level of consciousness together. And that's just one example. But epigenetics is another big one, right? Your thoughts are actually changing the way that your DNA, your genes read themselves, the proteins that it produces as a result of that reading. So it's very profound stuff to show that your mind is actually changing reality around you. And so back to the point is, if in this mind created universe, faith in just something faith in a higher power than yourself, it might be the key to actually the kind of like I would say the wiser choice of constructing, the wiser method of constructing reality, which is a positive construction, right? We want to be thinking good thoughts so that they turn into good things. And having responsibility for your thoughts is what all of this is training. You decide what you think, it isn't just random horrible thoughts popping in or us fearing. It's essentially fear-based thoughts, right? So faith is the antithesis to fear. If you're having faith in positive things and having trust in the universe around you, then those things are going to eventually come to fruition just due to vibrational resonance and the creation that you have within your mind, and knowing that your mind influences reality. All right, so I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you all for listening. I love you all, and take care.